Well, hello people, and welcome back to part 2 of Illium, our lightly modded Cities 1 build. Hope you're having a wonderful day. Got our city started up with a nice little town centre in our first episode, which is so featured by the bridge. Such a nice sight line, isn't it? And of course a little strip mall by the entrance to the town as well. Really enjoyed just having those extra quality of life features in the build. And today we get to bring that quality of life to our first industry as the port of Francis develops. Now we will add to this over time since we don't currently have any cargo harbours unlocked. They're a few milestones away just yet. So we will come back here and add cargo freight capacity, but today we'll add industrial evolution, one of the better content creator packs, all with the mods available. So let's start our first industry by bringing in these key walls first of all. So this prepares our space for us quite nicely. Before we do anything else, I want to correct all the height of the keys, and I'll show you how I do this. So in Move Its Marquee tool, we have a picker option up here, and it will picker anything that's selected here. So if I untick segments, for example, it no longer will picker a segment. So if you can't select something with the picker, that's why, because it's not selected. But I want to grab a node of all of these keys. So now it's saying we're focusing on just that key node. So if I do the big marquee, you'll see it's only grabbing the key, right? Nothing else is grabbed. And then I want to bring this all up to the same height. So Control H again, of course, from our tip last episode. And I guess we'll do one of the ones that was already here. And you'll see it as we click it. Boom, everything pops to that same level. And there's a nice even key all the way around. Cannot tell you what a relief network anarchy is in one of these series. Very important mod. Please play with network anarchy. And then likewise, as we did with our other ones, I think especially on an industrial port, these sharpened keys have quite an impact. So I'll go around all of it and sharpen them, because I think it gives us a much more unique aesthetic, doesn't it? So to unlock our first building and get our first industry going away from the generic production stuff, we'll go for forestry on the hillside here. But to get access to this, we kind of need to reform this road hierarchy a little bit here. So I'm going to take this away. Now I still want to keep the curve of this bridge coming down. I think that's quite a distinctive feature of this land, isn't it? How insane is the terrain here too? It's pretty challenging. We will terraform though, because I don't want to be this high off the highway. So I think if you've watched me for any amount of time, you can see what's coming with the forestry here against the road. It's as stable as the couplet at this point, isn't it? Now I don't want to make the hill look too unnatural, so I don't want to go too mental here, but I definitely want space for this forestry to lie by the highway. Once it's in. Once we have our sapling fields in too as well, don't forget, we can actually slope to get them essentially looking a little bit like vineyards, which would be quite nice. Not that that's an intended theme of today's build though. So let's curve this way. I don't actually have that road unlocked yet, do I? That's okay though. And then from this one, can we go straight out here? Bring that one down. Then we could just connect in here actually and have a little bit of node controller fun. Just pull everyone out a little bit. Same here too. As a fun fact, if you don't know, stretching your nodes like this actually increases your traffic flow, because it increases the speed at which the car can take the corner, because it's not as tight. So a little interesting point there, an extra use of node controller. They don't have to slow down as much as they approach the junction, which is quite interesting really. But this gives us the connection. I'm probably more inclined actually to go down to small 4-lane. As we come away from the interchange. Not quite sure what's going to lie in this hillside just yet, but at least our forestry will certainly be connected into this road at some point. Now we do have network multi-tool here, which is a great example or a time to show off the slope function. So we can set a slope mode, and then we want to select our end node, and our start node. It will get them all in between. We can hit enter and it will give it a gradual, perfectly even slope all the way up. It does eat into your terrain, so soften afterwards. Always very important. Well, that does give us a much nicer slope going up the hill there, right? I think we still kept a lot of the curves and fun of the interchanging. So that's nice. We like that. I don't think we have industrial road yet, do we? We won't. We use our median road though. And then from here, let's go to the end of this segment. We'll come up and then we'll create an entrance for our forestry district to sit here. Did want the food factory here, but I'm not quite ready to build a farm, especially in this bit of the city. It's going to be a little too close to the downtown for me for a farm, so we're going for forestry instead to blend in with the trees. Pull all our nodes and buildings up to that same building height too. Again, what I am going to do here is we'll show off another node controller trick. Let's actually come through the building, so we have this single segment. And with node controller, our blue node, we can just shift this off to the right. So we have something like that. And the same with this one too. Let's pull that off. Same amount of scrolls to the right. So we can keep it in the same junction without clipping with the building. And we can even open that one there, I think, a little bit as well, can't we? Super. So let's align our first forestry plantations, which will be the sapling fields, of course. And we'll do this one here. Now, I'm only planning to take this forestry initially to level 2. We will come back and finish it as the port is today's priority because I want the factory that comes from this. And then let's draw another holding road here. That's parallel with this. And then we can have our fields right by the highway. And for right now, you can come up into some sort of central spine system, I imagine. That connects in just so we can work, and then we'll grow this out with the port mills and whatnot over time to create this big forestry side district for our first industry build, but we'll get our generic industry sorted today. I did see some power warnings earlier. I think we're on the threshold, aren't we? Yeah, we're not far off. So we'll include a new power plant today. And then with that down, I'm also going to bring this into the port of Francis as well, because I certainly want some processing buildings featured as part of the port. And of course these do want trees, so I'm going to do the build guide overgrown brush underneath them. There we go. That'll give them their tree count. Of course, if you're in vanilla, make sure you actually place these on top of trees. You won't have your tree brush to put them underwards after the fact. And then what's our first processing buildings we get? It's a sawmill, isn't it? Oh, I wouldn't mind, if we're going to have the sawmill down here, I wouldn't mind actually bringing the wood from the plantation into the port, I think, to be processed, and that way we can use the log storage buildings as part of our port as well. I think some piled up logs, as if they're almost ready for export themselves, right, would be quite a cool visual for the port to have. Well, we'll let this run. In terms of workers, we're slowly ticking up towards that worker count. Now you can cheese with Move It by copy and pasting buildings. That doesn't give you the construction fee again, but I am going to try and follow the game's, I guess, progression mechanics to the best that I can. So I'll let this tick over and let this build up to level 2, just those first 500 resources and 150 workers, and then we can start developing the port. Oh, look at that train going past. Isn't that nice? Isn't that wonderful? We're going to have our first transport hub here, I think. Wonderful. There is level 2 forestry, which gives us the buildings that we need today. So the road infrastructure in the port, there's our industrial roads as well. I'd like to operate a one-way system here, I think. So we could upgrade this to industrial. I do like the wooden bridge. I think I'm probably going to go industrial. So yeah, we'll have a one-way flow system coming in here. So which way do you want to send them in? A lot of industrial traffic is going to be coming down this highway. I eventually envision another interchange down here at some point. Not sure what that's going to look like yet. Probably next to this rail yard, I imagine. Which maybe let me know if you're down for some custom train assets. I would love to build a rail yard. I won't get custom rails or anything, but some train props maybe just to decorate this might be fun. Let me know if you'd be down for that. I really don't want to go custom asset heavy on this series. And then coming through here, we'll have Industrial Road again. Then again, if I send them in this way, they'll cross over. And then as they leave the port, they'll only have to turn right here without interfering with the interchange again. So I think I'll send them in this way. I will certainly want to remember to factor in the port spaces, or space for those harbours. So let's do that. We'll come up. I'm going to go off the road guideline here. And come back onto it just to align this one. Now we can do this also with the network multi-tools parallel mode. But it's a bit overkill for something so simple, I think. And then this one here, let's line up with those main segments of key. Then we can bring in, we actually imagine to keep whole grids here as well. This can come straight up for the time being. And then that actually brings us quite nicely back to that dirt road, doesn't it? This will all become... So I'm just going to move these now, actually. We'll focus on that area in a second. Let's get the factory in first. So I know I also want the train cargo hub here, which is not currently not to 8,000, which we're quite far away from yet. So I'm just going to leave the back of the factory untouched because we'll have the harbour here, or the train station. But that is going to be coupled into the furniture factory as well, which is a nice asset. And it wants plain timber and paper to produce, of course. Which we're not producing in a minute, but we will be in a second. So we're going to have the new factory next door to the old. And I really want those rail lines to look like it's part of the facility. So when we begin to introduce trains into the city in probably 3 or 4 episodes, we'll come back and add the cargo hub on the back of this with a bit of move it fusing. So it's all part of the same facility, right? Also with this corner road connection, we'll just force it in with the proper road. And then we can just use move it just to bend it so we're happy. Something like that, I think. The road in the middle will probably be 2 directional. And I definitely want one running alongside the factory as well that will also hold the rail station one day too. Let's bring our 2 recycling centres over. Certainly have these as part of the port infrastructure too. There's 2 of them to use here. Don't want to flip them. I think we'll put them back to back, I think, here, because we can stack quite a few of these together as we expand our garbage needs. And then we'll just tuck that in around there as well. And we'll keep that quite modular as it grows out. These also produce goods for the city as well, so quite handy for it to be here. With our first processing buildings, we can afford, or just about, one of them. Let's do the biomass plant first, because this is quite a chungus, isn't it? It's a big building, this one. I think here, but then I'm going to flip it around a little bit. Let's have something like that. And then with our road, we'll just have the anarchied angle in, which we'll say no problem at all. We're at slightly different heights here, aren't we? And let's pull everyone up to that same height. But bearing in mind, one day our containers will be backing onto this. I think the biomass pellet plant, it really kind of looks like a port building anyway, doesn't it? Because of all the kind of conveyors and silos, pipes, etc. Definitely at home in a port, I think. So I'll enjoy that. And for the first time, we can actually paint proper wasteland in our port too, because we have surface painter now, which is the best. Or splashes of the classic overgrown brush. This is the same one I've been using since Orchid Bay, by the way. This build guide, overgrown. It's still the same. Use it pretty much everywhere now. It's perfect. Cool. So I'm liking this so far. Lots of chunky infrastructure. We will do some zoning, but we'll put that toward the back of the port. This can come in, and then we'll have another road coming here. No grid snapping near a key. And then we'll get something in there. Cool, so you will begin to receive your raw forestry products. We will eventually build somewhere for you, but I need to let some money grow because I'm spending it all, of course. The Port of Francis, I would love to have as Industrial Evolution. Definitely one of the must-buy content creator packs if you didn't get it. It makes industrial zoning significantly more aesthetically pleasing. But we will zone and plot this stuff. So I think for this port road, I'm actually going to bring down from this angle. And then we'll go for some fun blocks of it. So I want 4 by 4 back to back, so 8 tiles deep. And then we can get these 4 deep industrial evolution assets here. And we can place a few of these together. We can probably squeeze one more in, I reckon, if we just push them together. So with plopping buildings, they will still work as if they were zoned, if you don't know this. But you can often get warnings with them if you place in a lot of high level buildings, because they don't have the services that are needed to maintain them. So it is a risk that comes with plopping it. If you play with advanced building level control, which is also in this mod list, you can essentially negate all of those negative effects just by essentially telling your simulation not to care about it through either hiding the icons or straight up turning off a building abandonment. So here now we have a whole bunch of warehouses that will just be operating as zoned industry. You can do this in vanilla as well. Don't think you can't. You just have to be more patient with your zoning. It's just 4 by 4 assets zoned against each other. I think just to reinforce perhaps the self-storage vibe, I'm going to do a little bit of oil industry fencing. You could use insertion marking tool for this, but it's only a short stretch, so a bit overkill. And at the back here, let's draw them to the fence line. And the same again out the other side. Bring that up to those corners. Very nice. So I just think it's a much more industrial looking industry, isn't it? Which is always welcome. This is rezoning into industrial evolution, which is fine. I don't like the road structure here though, so let's sort this out so we can actually get the zoned bit of today's building. And the power plant will become a major part of the port as well. You can maybe fit right here, can you? Oh, can we get you to work? Oh, we can. Might even be able to make that part of the biomass plant with some clever surface paint to work there. We'll see how that turns out. And there's some sewage over here as well, isn't there? You, my smelly friend, come and sit in the port as well. Let's stick you just here actually. You're not going to fit? You will. We don't really need that back road, do we? We can kind of paint this out as a bit of industrial service sort of wasteland, I think. Let's bring in some of that gravel there. See what we think. Bit more fencing as well. Let's do something like that. Yeah, I like that. I might even go down to dirt road on that one there as well. So with our road this side of the port, let's come on to our road guidelines. And we'll do this through length as well. Hindsight, it might have actually been easier to use network multi-tools. Parallel mode for this, but it's fine. We're nearly done with it now anyway. And then this road through the middle now, that comes from the factory, is our new hierarchy, if you like. And that into there. And the dirt road can become industrial road. And then we'll have a look at this abandoned factory here as well. Which I do like. Our fire station will obviously stay here. Again, I'm going to move you into the port, but near the exit, because we're using a one-way system here. Which has just reminded me, this needs to be a one-way road. There you go. This is port exit out this side. Yeah, just so they have closer access to get out. Like if they're over here, they have to come all the way around. So something we want to avoid. And then I'll end the one-way system this side of the port because traffic will become less intense here as it fades away and tapers off to the rail yard. Bring in some zone stuff here. We'll have some blocks knocking around. And I'm going to put that in because it's at 84 degrees. I'm just going to use node controller to shift that back to 90 degrees basically. I think it can make your junctions look incredibly interesting, I think. And square this one off too. A little bit more pull back on the red and the blue. So yeah, we're just starting to make this segment a little bit too short. So I'm probably going to stop it there, I think. And pull green back. Same with our nodes on the entrance here as well. We're going to do that. And all of these two. Just so they get that faster turning speed coming in. And then for this zoning over here, we'll have this more generic industrial revolution as it grows up. Have some big blocks. Getting some workers demand for these guys, which is okay. I wouldn't be averse to having some apartments nearby as possible worker force. Maybe along this street as we utilise some emerging downtown stuff. Then again, maybe Brooklyn and Queens as I scroll the find it pool. Yeah, I think I might put some Brooklyn and Queens row home districts at the back of the canal here. Definitely as intended worker blocks. Let's do chunks of 3. That should be enough because this is high density residential. Should give quite a few workers for them. You could almost take this down a gentrification route as well, which I'm not going to because this is an industrial area. So, okay, I think we'll just go with them then. Let's give them some parks because there's not a ton down this end for them besides the commercial and the strip mall. Let's give them some small parks next door. Any playgrounds. You can have a gym and a basketball court, which I'm sure there's been many a ball lost in that canal over the years, hasn't there? Let's get our factory supplied first of all though, and then we can talk about the factory. Sawmill, let's have that front and centre. And then we can't afford the log yard, can we? No, 5 grand. With the factory, there is an abandoned home here, which I think I'm going to remove. And then with this factory, we can have quite a bit of fun. So we could use chain link fencing from the Natural Disasters DLC, which I think I'm going to. And we'll use this function here, which is the fence mode on prop line tool, which will draw up props in perfect fence structure for you. I think I'm going to run this fence down the back of the canal. I think that'll be quite tidy. Run it all the way here. It's fully up to the fence is the best way, isn't it? Yeah, I don't actually need to cut it on the street there at all, do I? And that'll give us a little chain link fence. Which adds a lot to the factory, doesn't it? My word. My word. We're not finished with the fencing yet, though. To further respect the abandoned factory, why don't we add in one of these gates, which we'll just place. We don't need the line tool for this one. Looks like it's going to fit in. We'll use move it to position it where we want it to. And then we can have a little gate in the chain link fence there. And maybe from this door, we can paint a bit of a path, maybe where maintenance people come in and maybe check the state of the factory. Would help if I use the right surface there, wouldn't it? They're coming in and making sure, I guess just checking the structure. Checking for perhaps violent youths that are misusing the property. And then we can have the fence run all the way up to the fence, at which point it'll back onto our cargo rail station over here. And probably a fair bit more surface painter, I think, around the base of the factory. It's not on the surface painter line, that's fine though. We can hide a lot of that angular jank, if you like, with bushes and overgrowth in the detail in time lapse. I think that helps blend the factory in quite a bit more, doesn't it? I'll be happy with that. With the log yard in, let's have a look at that. So I wouldn't mind a couple of these. And they're going to want to be taken to these buildings so they can... This is two-way road anyway, so they won't have any trouble navigating the one-way system. And let's do 2 log yards. And we'll find a fun configuration for these. And push them off just a bit. I'm actually not sure what surface painter line we're on at this angle. Surface painter, by the way, I'll explain what I'm talking about there. So you see if you're out certain directions, it creates perfect lines. So in this instance, you can create a compass. North, east, south and west. That's how surface painter works. When you start going angular and you're getting all the jank like we did here, that's why, because you're not on the surface painter line. Just to briefly explain how surface painter actually functions there. So a little bit of that there. Those worker resources just disappeared then, didn't they? These should start to come in. I wouldn't mind historicalizing a few of these, if not actually doing some older fused building on the port front. I'm going to do that. That building in particular has just triggered some inspiration. I mean, we could do it here actually, backing onto the log yards. So I'm going to place a few of them. This is just a level 1 Industrial Evolution asset. And then piece them together. Almost look like old kind of boat houses. Or just old port infrastructure, really. I guess it doesn't have to specifically be a warehouse, does it? And then we can line these up. As it catches fire, of course. Perfect timing. Anyway, but you get the point, right? Very, very waterfront vibes. Especially when it's covered in ash and soot as well. And there's our raw resource starting to arrive now too. This will attract a lot initially, but once it's reached capacity, it'll slow down. I'm just thinking about the possible orientation of the factory. Do we want the back end facing the port? Where's the logo? Oh, yeah, of course we do. What are you doing? Okay. The logo. The logo has to face the water, of course. I actually think this side here is also better suited for the rail. Another excellent use of network multi-tool here is the unlock segment. So we have a bit of fence here and an asset that I don't want. I can unlock it. It then becomes a freely interactable network and I can get rid of it. Same applies for any fence you find on any other asset. You can do the same unless it's this sort of fencing. It has to be a network fence. But that opens up the factory to the rail yard there, doesn't it? Which will be really nice, makes it look like they're almost directly exporting from the factory rather than what will eventually be a train station. So we got some annoying AI-ness here, and we can fix this with Traffic Manager. Let's come on to junction restrictions, and this little button here. Just want to tell them to go straight through. And they'll stop doing that little jumpy dance at the start when they come in, right? I think I'm also going to force you to one way as well. I think you should be one way. Maybe I mistakenly did that. So if you want to draw a road in here, but it's snapping to another network, you can turn off node snapping in Network Anarchy. And also without any road length as well, you'll get a much closer connection. So I'll take that up to there. We're also getting some more worker demands in the port. So I'm going to chuck another block of Brooklyn and Queens in here by the foot of the factory. I don't take up too much room here because I'm envisioning my first transit hub here by the industrial yard, so I would want to avoid this space as much as possible. But I think I could certainly justify some of these larger 4x4 units here. Just off the factory. Almost perhaps these have been gentrified. Maybe they were old factory units. But since been converted to residential. Just going to use normal non-parking road to hold these guys. I think some further well-placed parks and whatnot through this area. A bit more fencing and move it trickery to help us create a nice little space. You can get some nice angles here as well because of the proximity of the roads. And then just a little housing area. Close to the industry, close to the port. Quite a cheap place to live, you imagine, but also houses a lot of workers from our simulation perspective. With plenty of fence on this rail. I didn't cover a tip last episode with the intersection marking tool fence stuff. I'll eventually cover templates. I did say I'm going to kind of cover each mod, which I will do. Once the series gets up. So decorative network. I'm probably going to go for ore fencing here, I think. Again, let's shift that off the rail. So we're happy with it. And then if we come to the 3 dots in the top, we can hit apply between intersections, which will run it up to the next end node. Obviously this is the end of an intersection here. You can also do the same thing with the whole street, which will cover the whole network. But obviously we don't want to do that. So that would be an instance where I would prefer to use intersection marking fence right for long stretches like that run for quite a distance, without using up any nodes. There's some trees, I think, in this little residential area too. Let's come to our singular placement. Always find it to turn strength down as well. Sometimes you can double place trees on one strength because it's very sensitive, which you'll inadvertently eat into your tree count if you're not paying attention to that. Cool. Something quite simple. Nothing over the top. I think that should just blend in really nicely next door with the factory, mate. So nice being able to choose the asset I want rather than having to wait for it to level up and then hope you catch it at a historical level, you know. Those wood piles are really paying off now, aren't they? Look at that. That is lovely stuff. How's the interchange performing? We're still okay here. I can eventually envision, which I might actually talk about now, while we expand our road hierarchy, a bridge coming across both the highway and the rail, dropping back to this side to provide extra support for the port. We'll see what it needs. So this road, I want it to come over here. So let's time lapse this together. I'm also going to grade this road as well with the network multi-tools slope function. You can also slope with move it. They both pretty much do the same thing. And then from here with our two nodes on the bridge, we just want to make sure that we'll probably chuck them up to the same height so we're clear. And then from this one, I'll show you the move it function as well, so you know how to do both. With move it, you just want to select all the nodes where you want to slope from and to. So those for me. Come into your toolbox, hit slope objects, and it will slope it for you. 6 and 2 3s really, whichever way you do it, network multi-tool or node controller. Both can have their uses and their time really. And of course after any mod slope work, let's re-slope as well. Cool, so this is the road I eventually envision hooking into another interchange. Likely more factory infrastructure around here. I'm planning to keep kind of this whole chunk of the landmass from the port, probably up to the end of the rail yard here. Quite heavy industry, as a bit of a contrast to the modern downtown that will sit across from the bay from it. That's the plan anyway. We're a little ways from there yet, but the interchange is flowing nicely. We're not getting any traffic just yet. And there's the warning for our second bit of power, which we can afford now. Well, no we can't. We'll have to wait a tiny little bit. There we go. 35 grand for another coal plant. We'll have a bit of that. I am going to have to move you forward a little bit, otherwise you encroach together, don't you? I think I'm happy with that back-to-back views in there. It kind of combines them into one building in this central kind of coal storage yard, doesn't it? And then with a bit of surface painter, I reckon we can even that out quite a bit. You can find the line with surface painter to kind of give yourself more of a definitive edge. It also helps two surfaces meet a little easier as well, I think. So if we grab the dirt from that point that's on the biomass plant, we can run that up and against. Which gives us a bit of a better edge, doesn't it? Super. Love surface painter, everyone. That feels like a good point, indeed. But a lot of surface painter action. Right, I'll stop. I can't help myself. But let's detail at the port, zone in the rest of the industrial cubes and little shapes that are left around here. We can get some really nice fused corners on these shaped blocks too. And then overgrowth, more fencing. I'll also tidy up the very basic level 2 forestry as well, so it's not just an unbuilt eyesore until we get to finishing that. And then we'll be right back. Right guys, let's have a little review of what's happened, shall we, across the port of Francis. Lots of plopped old industrial evolution stuff through here. Some props and pathways in between. And car parking behind buildings, etc. More fusings over this way. Some of the level 2 and 3 stuff to create more. I think just more modern industry, I think, is the point here. More kind of workshops, maybe some offices and a artisan tea maker or something, you know, rather than kind of smokestacks all over the place. Especially that comes with a lot of the vanilla zoned industry too. Industrial evolution is just such a good pack because you get so many assets with it as well, and they're so versatile. You can fuse them and do so many things. A little bit of commercial and car parking on the port, sort of lunch for the workers, etc. Also drops in another police station, since we were dropped into the yellow with jail availability, so we have a bit of port security. And we just had the car parks on the front bobbed off, and then placed in a car park in front of it, which kind of makes it look like it's been used as the car park for the building. It kind of expands it a little bit. I dropped in some warehouses which are storing, or will store once they arrive, the products for the factory, plain timber and paper, both in these two. Two small warehouses with a path and the pathway behind them. The last of the housing blocks went in with more parks, so they're all happy. And then just some tree lining around the rail, lower, as if it's been deforested, right? With the overgrowth next door. And then that goes into the rail yard, which will expand, of course, in future episodes. Let me know if you're happy for me to grab some train props, because I'd love to detail the rail yard. Unfortunately, you can't place the vanilla train buildings. They're not in the game, as props at least. And I like that you can't really tell which are plopped beside the obvious fused ones. Nice, another little nice combination here with a double loading bay. I did use building spawn points on this building, because the front of the building's actually facing into the back of this one. So just drag the spawn point over, so it can still receive its deliveries and won't die. Furthermore, our logs are piling up, which is very nice, next to more industrial evolution fusing. So the forestry is keeping this very nicely stocked indeed. We'll finish that forestry during another episode when we bring that up to level 5 and get the pulp mills and build up a much more significant industry expansion when those demand bars rise again. But at least we have a level 2 foundation ready to go for that. Lots more fencing and detailing. Decided to switch out for the solid fencing. I think it felt a bit more secure. And you can just see the little pretend gate here as well. A really nice way, I think, to integrate an old factory into an old industrial area. I think once we get the train station here, where you can see I've painted the words train station to represent that station will go here. So 8,000 people once we unlock trains. Over here, there's some parking and buildings that have just been pulled off of that angle. Of course, you couldn't zone this one like this. With some overgrowth around the back, before a mix of forestry, base game and DLC stuff to expand the sawmills and the biomass plants over this way. There's some really nice little alleyways and some kind of courtyards developed in this industrial space. Little doors behind the back here, and remove some of the fencing so it all kind of flows together. Really nice little space and design. And of course we'll get some cargo hubs here as well so we can accept ship traffic into it. This won't be Illium's major port. This isn't like the, you know, the big shipping container one. Not sure where we'll put that. Maybe over here, more towards the open water. Maybe in this bay we can develop into a bit of a port. Because imagine our downtown and high density is going to fill a lot of this landmass here. Basically from this highway up to the end of the peninsula will probably be our city centre, I think. Something like that. So we'll make the port maybe in more of the open waters. But I will still have ships coming down here. Actually, that's a good point. I'm not even sure if they can get here. They should be able to. I guess the sea connection is probably over here, isn't it? It depends if they'll map through here. I actually have no idea if they will. But even if they don't, that's fine, because we'll still have export here when the train station comes in. And then also chucked in a pedestrian bridge and surface painted up to the edge of the factory, which has been fenced off against the, well, old and new factories here. Really love the dirt and the train yard as part of the factory there as well. Isn't that a nice orientation? Very nice. Quite similar to something we did in Orchid Bay, this, with the furniture factory. But with the mods we can do so much more. Right? Very nice. And this bridge is taking a lot of people off the pedestrian crossings, because this main road with pedestrians is super busy. With people walking back into the houses. They're taking a bit of pressure off them so they can get back into the quay. Downgraded into some roadie so the birches don't clip through the path. And then that just gives us a nice little bridge back and over there. to those fused core power plants. Then the traffic isn't too bad at all. You can see how people flow here. So this industrial traffic is bringing logs in. And then they wait here, they cut across, and they turn on the lights. And then once they leave, like these guys here, they're just turning right at the intersection and then leaving the city again. So this isn't too bad. This can handle a little bit more, but I definitely envision another interchange down here. And of course, once we have population over this end, which I think is where we'll spend episode 3 developing more of this shoreline. And maybe, I think we've unlocked ferries as well, haven't we? My egg senses are correct. We have unlocked ferries. I should have included the ferry depot in today's build, but we'll cover that next episode. And I think we'll maybe use ferries as our first form of public transport and come and colonize this island, if you like. So we'll have some fun with the waterways next time. But hopefully, a nice, inspiring way to use official assets and some light modding in a port to create our first proper generic industry space. But otherwise, I'll shut up and leave it there. Let's thank you all so much for watching. Hope you're continuing to get a taste of how Illium is going to develop using all the assets we have available from all of the DLCs, with some of those extra mod tools allowing us to do some significantly more interesting things. So I hope you're enjoying it. An enormous shout out to the YouTube members and patrons that support these videos, with a roll call to our golden egg patrons: Casino, Spartan Angel, Michael W, Bad Wolf, Louis Adlam, Phoenix MD, Blythe, Jamin, and Great C. Thank you so much indeed for all of your incredible support. If you want to get involved in that, links below to Instant Gaming and Patreon, best ways to support the channel. I'll catch you next time. Thank you so much indeed for supporting Illium and Cities Skylines 1 content. And as always, enjoy the rest of your day.